Hi, this is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. We saw this reel come in about a week and a half or so ago when I showed you a box of Penn reels that I had purchased. And this is the first one we're going to do. It's the Penn Senator 9.0. It's by request, actually. Somebody saw the box of Penn reels and said, I have one. I'm having trouble with a sticky free spool release. Can you show me how to take this apart, service it, and get that free spool release working? So I'm going to do that. I'm going to actually rebuild the reel. So two things I recommend when we rebuild the reel. One of them is get rid of the line, especially if you've purchased the reel and you don't know its history or how long it's been sitting out there. And quite honestly, this one's got a lot of dust on it and things, so I don't know the history here. I'm going to get rid of that. There's nothing worse than using old line on a reel, losing the fish, and then complaining because you didn't realize that the old line had suffered UV damage or something and caused it to fail. So I'm going to take that off, and I'm going to stop my video here because you don't need to see me spend 10 minutes pulling the line off. We'll be back in a moment. Okay, so I'm getting through that exercise, and I just found that something that's not uncommon, but it's all the reason to reinforce what I've been stating. I found that somebody took the easy way out, and when they were reloading the line, they only top loaded the first 200 yards or so, and then they've used the older line below that. And as you can tell, this is older monofilament. This has probably been on the reel for 10 or 15 years, and just looking at it, and it may be hard to see, it's all twisted and gnarled and just been sitting there ready to snap. So if you were just trusting that the reel had good line on it, you let this stuff out, there's a sure reason why you're going to lose fish with that. So just another reason to say, if you get a reel that you don't know the history of, take the line off right away. So the reel's been stripped, but that's just indicated that there's more problems to this than meets the eye. When in free spool, we were able to move the spool, but we find that there's a chirp going on in that spool. Could mean it's a bent or out of shape one. But more importantly, when you put it back in this to gear, you can't turn the reel. So I'm guessing there's broken line in here or something. But regardless, we're going to take this thing apart and we're going to make it right. May have to go and order a spool if it's out of true. But the truth of the matter is here is that there's something impeding the progress inside here. So let's go ahead and take this reel apart then, and let's do a quick visual inspection. So again, this one was bought sight unseen. You can anticipate some problems. We found the one problem already with the old line on there. So anybody who's buying one and thinks that they're going to grab a reel, this wasn't eBay, but let's just say it was eBay, grab a reel off of eBay and go fishing with it, you're in for a surprise, right? So this has got an aftermarket AFCO handle on it that that stop has to be removed in order to take the handle nut off. That enables you to set the back max off on the reel itself. Let's see if I can get this in here now. Yep, I can. Everybody's come up with these little design quirks and changes, and I'm just we'll get back to this one in a moment, but we're going to take that handle screw off first, and we can remove the assembly. We can get rid of that star adjuster knob here. We can go find out what in the world's going on underneath here. There's a couple of the Shim Washers that go with this. Now this is an older style reel. It actually has the cap where you can do the drags from the outside, and we're going to replace these drags. That's part of what I recommend in a service. But if these are the thick drags, we'll go back to the 5 and 5 setup that is common with the newer reels. All right, well, we're just going to remove these screws then. The side plate screws are bigger screws, so I use a different screwdriver for that. That's why it's nice to have a variety of screwdrivers that you have. Some things don't change. I've continued to keep my hand protected with a latex glove. I use a parts tray to put all my pieces and parts, and I take my time. Patience is everything. Take pictures along the way. If you haven't done these reels before, take pictures to make sure that you have the progress, how you did this thing, the sequence that you did them, and where the pieces and parts came from. If you don't have a good memory and you fail to do that, you may get stuck with extra parts in the basket not knowing where they belong. The other thing you want to do on something like this is you want to grab a schematic. Those schematics are available at mysticparts.com. Those schematics will tell you where the pieces and parts go in the event that you lose track of them. So it's kind of your exploded view blueprint of the deal, and we're just a couple of steps away from trying to figure out why this thing is not cranking properly. So it's not infrequent that you'll find reels like this that they come up for sale. And they come up for sale because there's a problem. So you just buyer beware. Somebody like myself, it's not as serious because I know how to repair these things. Frustrating if I have to go out and buy, a spool or something, but I'm thinking that there might be something else going on in here. And this is pretty much a standard, straightforward set. So it's not this side. This piece of the reel is working. It's dirty, but it's working. Let's come to the spool then. So I think what we basically have is a spool that's out of round. That's kind of hard to test for, but my guess is that's why the reel is not turning there. So let's just put this back together. There really is no test for an out of round spool. But if you can take the working side off, just kind of hold it steady. That'll generally tell you what's going on here. And this one's not turning easily, so we got some more work to be done here. Let's go ahead and take this part of the reel off, and we'll set this up. We'll make sure we rebuild the inside, and then we'll come back and deal with the other part of the frame issue. So this is just an interesting point to note. I got two buckets there, but an interesting point to note, the design of the Penn Senator 9.0 is pretty much identical to the design of the Penn Long Beach series. It's just bigger pieces and parts. On this one, there is a ball bearing on the one side that aids in the turning and spool movement of the reel. But the rest of it essentially is just bigger pieces and parts. Now they make a conversion here, and that's what I'm going to go to. If these are the thicker drag washers, I'm going to use the 5 and 5. Here's your anti-reverse dog and spring. Don't lose those. I'm just going to pull that. There's your jack, just a bigger version of the others. Two big springs for your yoke. Here's your yoke and your main gear. Main gear's got a lot of crud on it. We're going to make sure that gets cleaned as part of this process. There's a lot of heavy grease in here, so we want to clean that off. So I like to wipe it, and then I like to kind of use a penetrating oil like a WD-40 or something to loosen the rest of it, and make sure that all gets cleaned. But as we saw, this reel is turning here, so the issue is not in the main body of the reel. The issue is in the spool itself. And I noticed that as I was pulling the line off, that it was not coming off smoothly. And I just thought maybe we had some line or something trapped underneath there. So this is your surface internal side plate of the gear. For those of you that are trying to put one back together again and wondering what it looks like. And again, it looks very much the same as a smaller Penn Senator or a Long Beach reel. This is a bearing. Test the bearing. Use a Phillips head screwdriver. Turn it. Make sure it's turning internally. Then you can put some oil on bearings. Bearings get oil, not grease. That's turning fine. We're just going to set that aside. We'll come into the drag stack then. And again, this one has the older style. It has the grease cap. And then it has it should have probably the thicker washers. Well, maybe not. This one looks as though it does not. Looks like the conversion was probably made on this one already. That's what I'm seeing here. I am seeing that they're worn as well, so we're going to replace those drags as part of this rebuild. This is the hard fabric washer, and there's a series of 5 and 5. I'm just going to pan out a little bit with this. Oh, we're in good shape there. Alright, so we have the main gear, then you have a fabric washer, then you have 5 and 5, and we're going to go back. As I mentioned, I'm going to get rid of these drag washers. Again, something that's fairly common that I do if I'm replacing. This is the top one. If I'm replacing the reel, if I'm rebuilding it and I don't know the history of it, then I most certainly want to replace the drag washers. And I'm seeing enough wear here to say that it needs to be done. Okay, this is the setup for these. Just looking, there's one more here. Okay, and if you had any question about this, you could go to the schematics and it'll show you the layout for these. Now these are oiled. It's got a lot of oil on them, but they're relatively clean, so we'll take care of that. And I have drag washers. I'm going to have to stop the video, go get the drag washers. But I do have a new set of drag washers for these as well. So just bear with me a moment. We'll clean these up. Just wanted to show you the layout. We'll get rid of these 5 fabric washers which are worn. And we're just going to put these aside for a moment because I'm going to go over to that pinion gear. Fabric washer. The fabric washer holds the anti-reverse dog tight to the back end of the gear sleeve, which is this piece. And again, everything is the same as a Long Beach, just bigger. So same idea with the gear sleeve. It's held in by a pin here. This is an oil felt washer. That's the top of the drag washer. Grab my little pin. I'm going to knock that hold height pin and knock that out. And you can see that I just knocked that pin out. I'm just going to leave that right on the table here, being careful of that, and we should be able to pull that sleeve off, which we are. That enables us to clean up the junk underneath on the bridge. And that basically is just old grease. That's a stainless steel post. You want to make sure that the inset where that pin rides is clean. Which it is. That's where the pin will ride when we reassemble. And just make sure that the bridge assembly is clean otherwise as well. This one is in good condition. I don't see any pitting or any serious scarring or that. But if you did, you could work on it with steel wool like this. Just clean it up. But all we really have here is just some residual tarnish. Otherwise, this is in good condition. We know that we saw that it was a little bit messy underneath there, so clean the bottom of that gear sleeve. And then grab a cotton swab or something and run that inside just to get any of the grease that might be in there out of there so that it doesn't clog the channels. This one, again, as I mentioned, is relatively clean. And then you want to just inspect the threading on the gear sleeve where the adjuster nut rides, just to make sure that that's clean as well. Once you do that, you can go back now and put a little bit of lubrication onto the post. And we can reinstall that gear sleeve. Now we're putting lubrication on the post because that's the way it kind of comes from the factory, but most of the time when you do a normal service you do not have to remove this gear sleeve, and the lubrication for this is actually putting the oil in through the top, and that top, remember, is the one that this little nut that holds the screw that holds the handle on. You remove that. That's why it says oil here. You put a drop of oil in there, and that will keep that sufficiently lubricated. Okay, we're back into this. I want to make sure that I clean the channel in here. You can see that that's got a lot of grease and oil in there as well. So let's go ahead and clean that out. I want to inspect that bottom for scarring too. I want to make sure that it's nice and smooth so that it doesn't affect the operation of the drag washers. And if you get stuck, there's some relatively stubborn grease there, just give it a shot of some penetrating oil to help loosen up the junk. And then you can see it'll just clear that right up. While I'm doing that, I'm also inspecting the teeth on the main gear to make sure that nothing's bent or broken or chipped or out of place. And we're okay with that. And then we'll clean up the bottom as well. And then we'll look for that red fabric washer. I'll place that over the gear sleeve. And we can put the main gear on. It seems like that pin that I put in might be sticking out just a little bit. And it is. For some reason it just has a tendency, if it's just a little bit proud, you can't get it over. So we'll just grab the pin that I used to knock it out before, knock it in. That's good. Now it should just fly on. There you go. All right. Okay, so now I'm going to just pause the video for a moment. I'm going to clean my hands off because regardless of how much you try to protect yourself, you still get some grease on there. I'm going to go get the 5 drags that I need for this. Okay, so we're ready to reinstall then. I took the time while off camera there to get my 5 new HT100 washers. Also pulled out my Cal's Universal Grease. Remember, I have my hand gloved here, and I'm going to start by lubricating the HT100s with some drag grease, and this is the pattern that it goes. It goes the hard washer, the fabric washer, HT100, metal, fabric, metal with the ears, fabric, round circle metal, fabric, eared washer, fabric, metal, and then we have that felt washer with the cap. So we'll start by putting some Cal's Universal Grease on these. You don't need a lot. I rub it in with my hand just to make sure that it's covering the whole washer, and any excess you can wipe off with a paper towel. You then put that in, first metal one, and you go back and you repeat that process a few times. So here we are again. We'll do the second one now. Rub that all around. If you feel like there's any excess, go ahead and wipe that off with the paper towel. You don't want too much because it's only going to squeeze out if you just glob it on there, and it's not going to be effective at all. And actually the rest of the grease is just going to come in and work to clog the rest of the reel there. So we'll put that third piece in there then. Again, if you have any excess, take the time to wipe it off. This is the round one. We put the keyed washer in on the last one. Grab that fabric washer again. Again, work it in so that it's got it. Now, the whole idea is to keep these drag washers flexible. That's what the drag grease is doing here. We're going to go with that keyed washer now, and they fit in the slots inside the main gear there. And again, we'll use some more of that Universal Grease, drag grease there from Cal's. Last one of those. Last metal. We got a little fabric kind of felt washer here that gets oil. Just put a nice little dousing on that and over the top, and that's our drag stack. So that's how this one runs, and you can see it's turning nice and smoothly with the service we've just done. So it's time to reassemble the side plate then. We're going to go back in, we're going to grab the yoke springs. There's two of them. While I have this open, I'm going to put a dab of grease onto the eccentric. So that operates smoothly. And I'm going to put a little bit of oil behind the eccentric in the channel there, just so that works itself free. And to the person who has a sticking release point, that's probably what you want to do there. You want to just make sure that that eccentric mechanism is operating properly. I want to make sure it's oiled. Okay, now we'll come back in now on the yoke. I'm going to put grease on both sides of that. I've already cleaned the channels on the spool gear. I've checked it to make sure that the teeth are in good condition. We're going to place that over the top of those two springs. And now we can get the jack. And the jack is best inserted when you make sure that the clip is up top, the pivot that it sits on. And you can hold that yoke while you slip the jack in place, and that's the way we found this. Okay, so now we've got the bridge assembly redone. There's 4 screws that hold the bridge assembly together. It's had a little bit of tarnish on them. It's not critical that they get cleaned, but you might as well, since you're taking the time to rebuild the reel, you might as well take the time to clean the tarnish off. So there's 2 types of screws here. There's a fully threaded screw and there's a partially threaded screw. The partially threaded screw is going to be going through these yoke springs, so they're going to go on the top of the reel. The fully threaded screws are going to go below. And what we do on this one now is we're going to start with the one that has the post opposite it and press down on that yoke assembly to install the main gear. Press in. Now we're looking for the dog. The dog sits on top of the spring through the hole, and we've got a flat spring here. This flat spring is going to wind itself around that post. Not easy to do with the camera angle, so I'm going to apologize in advance. But this is properly installed. It rides around the post and lays on top of the dog. And we complete the rotation, lining up that screw with the bridge plate. And I do like to do 2 turns on that, not a lot more. I want to make sure that I can get all of the other pieces set right before I go ahead and tighten them all down. So now I like to alternate as well. I like to go north, south, east, west on these. And you'll feel when they click in. Sometimes the visual helps. Just turn it over and take a look where you are. And again, don't fully tighten it down. Then I like to go to the other side with the spring assembly. Come on down to the last piece then. And this is essentially the rebuild on this reel. So we've serviced the drags, we've cleaned the reel up, we've lubricated the bearing, we've lubricated the yoke and the spool gear and main gear. We're just going to test it. Oops, our drags just fell out. That's not a good sign. Again, this is the one that's, interestingly enough, can be done from the outside, so don't panic if you find yourself in this situation. Just reinstall. I guess that was a convenience factor that Penn decided was going to work on this. There we go, we're back to where we began. So that's the reinstall if you just wanted to replace the drags from the outside. And then I got that one little bearing is not seated yet there. in the case, but the spool will push that back in when we get ready to reinstall that. I guess I'm just not learning on that, huh? I want to show you the operation of the reel, and unfortunately I keep, let's hold it like that, and you can see how nicely that turns now. So that's the rebuild of this side of the reel. I'm going to come back in now and hold this tight. This one has the collar goes on next. In this case it has 3 shim washers. And again, if you had questions about where all of this stuff was going, then you can go back to your pictures. And then this is the Aftermarket Handle by AFCO, which is Atlantic Fishing Tackle Company. And it enables you to kind of limit the throw of your drag, so that it's kind of a set it and forget it motion of the drag there. There we go, set on that. And we can grab the handle and we complete down the drag, and you can see this will ride in the channel there. And what you generally would like to do is you would like to tighten it to where you want, and then if you press in, let's say we just want to back that up a little bit to allow for it, you back it up to where it's right, and then you can lock down this nut to hold that in place there so that it doesn't loosen or tighten during retrieve. Okay, if we didn't put oil in that gear sleeve on the way in, we would do it now. But we've done that already, so now we're just going to go back to this. And then I think we're ready for the unfortunate news that that spool is out of round and will need to be replaced. But we will have eliminated all of the mechanical issues here with the rebuild of the reel. So let's finish that. Last thing in then is the hold fast screw there. So the 9.0 is a nice sharking reel. It's a nice tuna reel. It's got high capacity, as you saw from all that line I was taking off. It can hold heavy duty line. And this one's working the way it should be working now. Let's go ahead and put that spool back in. Like I said, I'm kind of afraid here, so I'm not going to go through the full cycle at the moment here. I'm just simply going to install a couple of pieces on this. And we'll see if we have a grind, a noticeable chirp in that spool. And if we do, it's going to need to be replaced. There's 2 sizes of screws, if I didn't mention that earlier, for the side plate. There's longer and shorter ones. The longer ones go into the cross posts. The shorter one goes into the reel seat. For the purpose of this exercise, I need one on the top and one in the reel seat, and that should tell me enough. This is the shorter one, just by example. You can see that there's 2 different sizes on those screws. This one's going to go in the bottom. That should be enough to hold the pieces to the frame. And then we'll test to see what's going on with that spool. Oh, actually, so there was something going on inside this reel, because this is turning fine right now. So I think we've escaped the obvious. I'm not sure, maybe it's quite possible that that there was something stuck on the spool, something stuck on the shaft, or whatever, that when we went to clean, it worked well. But right now, if I can spin that spool without noise, which is what I can do, then it's a success. And I can't tell you how relieved I am that it's as simple as that. So what we haven't done so far, we haven't done the house cleaning. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of dust on this. You can see it on the bottom of the spool here on the reel seat. I can kind of write my name in there if I wanted to. We have some old dried greases on here, and that's the next step. So let's take this side plate off for a moment. I'll just get you started on it, but I'm not going to do my whole laundry in front of you folks. But I just want to show you what I like to use here as products. I can't tell you how relieved I am to find out that whatever was jamming that up has been cured by the rebuild. So we learned a couple of things here. Don't trust completely the purchase that you make. Kind of enter into it with a little bit of skepticism. You want to take all the line off. Line is cheap. Don't try to save nickels and lose big fish. And then if you don't know the history of the reel, make sure you go ahead and rebuild it. Now there's a bearing on this side that we didn't clean. That's an oversight, but we just caught it there. We'll go ahead and put some oil on that as well. Alright, so now I got chrome pieces. These are in nice condition. So use steel wool. Use a mild detergent. Whatever. I like this one as a general degreaser. It's Purple Power. Just a quick shot. There's not much needed there. A little kitchen scrubby pad. Usually can work off the tough dried grease. And I'll tell you, in a matter of like no time, no elbow grease, no nothing, we've got a nice shiny piece of chrome there. So that's what I wanted to show you. We'll do the rest of this off camera. No need for you again to watch me do dirty dishes here. But the good news is all of this is held together. The integrity of this reel is good, and it's going to go fishing again in the near term. And hopefully it's going to hook up in the fall with some tuna or some shark or whatever else might be around. And just before signing off, the other note I had, drag washers are cheap, right? They're $2 a piece or something like that. Go for the Carbon X if you like. I always get questions on Carbon X. Maybe they're $3 a piece. They're cheap. If you got a reel this size, you're going to take it for big fish. Get rid of that line. Get rid of the drag washers. Go ahead and upgrade those. It just doesn't make any sense. It's like riding on ball tires. It just doesn't make any sense to go out with a new car with ball tires. It doesn't make any sense to go out with a new reel that you don't know much about, trusting that the drags are going to hold when you hook into that big fish. So that's it. That's the Penn 9.0. That's how you rebuild one. A little bit of a scare, but a little bit of relief on the end as well. Some techniques on how to clean the reel. A little bit of a view in terms of a slightly different type of a aftermarket handle here that's going to let you set and forget the drag, so that you have it just properly tensioned and it doesn't get banged around and be affected by the strike or hitting a rail or something, and then you have the wrong tension on those drags when you go to fight the fish. So I hope you've enjoyed that. If you did, please like it. If you want to see more of these, please subscribe. Tell your fishing buddies about it. I need subscribers as well. So tell your fishing buddies about this channel. And I wish you good fishing. This is Dennis with Second Chance Tackle. Thank you for watching.